Dynamic, articulate, perceptive, courageous, outspoken.
Alright, we got a crazy story right here, right? It says, wait a second. The title of the video is, Georgia female inmate infected 6 guards with HIV. Days later, she was found. You can read, right? Alright, so look, right? It says this video contains descriptions of real-life crimes, emotional trauma, and sensitive topics. It is intended for educational and storytelling purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised. Some names and identifying details have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved. So as we go through this story, I want you to not let yourself get disturbed. If the topics in this video is a little bit too much for you, please click off. I don't want to ruin your mentality or ruin your whatever, but this video, the title is just, I have to know. I just have to know. So let's go. I'm gonna full screen this, and we're gonna see what this hour-long video is talking about. Everything. Let's go.
6 correctional officers, all infected with HIV.
Okay. I'm experiencing. Okay.
The inmate found dead in her solitary cell.
So she was found in her cell after the, wow. Now, just so you know, anybody who's watching this video that may not be aware, this is an AI generated photo. This is not a real person. It may resemble somebody you know, but this is not a real person. It even said in the beginning things have been changed to protect people's identity and all that. So just understand that this is supposed to be a visual representation of what she may have looked like. Just putting that out there.
Staged like a suicide. But what the prison didn't expect was the letter she left behind. A letter that exposed everything. Names, secrets, and the truth that shook the entire system to its core. This is the story of Tiana Brooks, a prisoner they tried to erase but couldn't silence. Most inmates arrive in chains. Tiana Brooks walked into Palmwood Correctional Facility in Georgia with her head high, her hair braided tight, and eyes that had seen too much. She wasn't like the others. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. And she didn't speak unless someone asked her a direct question. To the guards, she was just another felon. 31 years old, black, attractive, convicted of fraud, aggravated assault, and knowingly transmitting HIV. But there was more to her story than what was on file. What the system didn't know, what it had never asked, was what had happened to her before she became the woman now stamped with a DOC number. Tiana wasn't born a criminal. She was born Tiana Marie James in a 1-bedroom apartment on the south side of Atlanta to a mother who never made it past her 19th birthday and a father she never met. Her mother...
Well, you can already see that she had a very tragic backstory. A lot of people who end up in the correctional facilities, there's usually missing parts in their life that they try to fill by taking matters into their own hands. And this world that we live in, there are rules and regulations that you must follow if you want to have a good life.
Her mother died from a heroin overdose before Tiana turned 3. After that, she became property of the state. From ages 3 to 12, she bounced between 8 foster homes. Some were cold but clean. Some were infested with roaches and yelling. Some smelled like bleach and old food. Others smelled like sweat and beer and things she didn't understand until later. By the time she was 9, Tiana had learned 3 things. Keep your mouth shut. Hide what matters. Don't cry in front of them. At 12, she was placed in the home of a man named Everett Douglas.
Oh boy.
He had a wife who was always at work and a smile that never reached his eyes. He told Tiana she was pretty, too pretty to be acting tough all the time. He bought her a dress for her 13th birthday. Then, he told her to model it for him. Alone, in the basement. The abuse went on for months. She told a school counselor once. They opened a case. But before anything came of it, Everett moved her to a different county and forged new paperwork. It was another 2 years before anyone found out.
So basically, she was taken advantage of as a young girl, and that made her have a particular outlook on men and probably life in general. Like, her whole life was just a tragedy. Like, there was no good from where she was at, and then you property of the state as a young child, like you already in foster homes and man, this woman went through a life that a lot of people, men, women, anybody, could probably never survive as long as she did. You probably would have taken yourself up out of here early, real early. But this is a whole hour-long video. Let's try to get through it.
By then, Tiana had already run away, sleeping in libraries, bus stations, abandoned houses. That winter night, the rain didn't stop. It fell in slow, steady sheets against the rusted metal roof of a downtown bus station in Atlanta. 13-year-old Tiana sat curled up on a bench in the corner, knees to her chest, arms around a torn hoodie that smelled like old detergent and concrete. She hadn't eaten in almost 2 days. Her shoes were soaked. Her stomach ached. But in her hands was a book, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. She couldn't pronounce every word, didn't know all the meanings. But she understood the loneliness, the shame, the silence, the way the world looked through broken glass. Tiana didn't cry. She hadn't cried in months. But as she read about Pecola Breedlove, a girl who thought having blue eyes would make her lovable, something inside her cracked, quietly. The book had come from a little free library box across from a gas station. It had no front cover. The pages were dog-eared and stained with coffee rings. On the back flap, Tiana took a nearly empty pen from her hoodie pocket and scribbled 3 words in tiny block letters. I existed here. No one saw her write it. But that sentence meant more than any home she'd ever had. Across the station, an old man, homeless, hunched, wrapped in a flannel blanket, watched her from behind a vending machine. He shuffled over, held out half of a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in foil. "Don't let the world turn your pain into poison, baby girl," he said softly. Then he walked away. Tiana didn't say thank you. She couldn't. Her throat was a knot, but she ate every bite. The next morning, a city worker chased her off the bench. "Go somewhere else," he barked. "You can't stay here." She nodded, grabbed the book, and ran. She ended up at the public library downtown. 3rd floor, back reading room, a place no one checked because the window had been busted for months. She sat in a beanbag chair with stuffing leaking from the sides, held the book against her chest, and closed her eyes.
Okay, what I'm gonna do, I want to cut the video and react to it and say things and give my commentary, but it looks like they're gonna do 15-20 minutes of her whole backstory, and then they're gonna get into the correctional stuff. I don't really know, and the video's an hour. I said that 3 times already, so just bear with me. We gonna get through this. I know I'm stopping it, but yeah, let's go.
Not to sleep, just to stop existing for a minute. From that day on, the library became her shelter. She read encyclopedias to look busy. She memorized facts about oceans, African queens, and criminal law. She learned how to stay invisible. Once, a janitor caught her curled up behind the history section. He stared for a second, then handed her a pair of socks from his cart. "You keep reading like that," he muttered. "Maybe one day, someone will read about you." She didn't believe him, but she never forgot it. At 15, when police arrested her for breaking into a gas station to steal food, they dumped out her backpack onto the floor. All it contained was a broken comb, a crumpled $5 bill, and that same copy of The Bluest Eye, now taped together with Scotch tape and prayer. One officer picked it up, flipped through it with a sneer. A thief with a Morrison book? What is this poetry club for felons? His partner laughed. Tiana didn't. She stared at the book as they shoved her into the back of the cruiser. In her head, one sentence repeated itself like a drumbeat. Next time, I won't be the one they laugh at. From then on, the bluest I wasn't just a story. It was a reminder that even if the world saw her as a ghost, a criminal, a number on a jumpsuit, she had once been a girl in the rain, holding a book, daring to believe she was worth remembering. And long before she became a headline, she had written her truth in a place no one could erase. I existed. She was arrested at 15 for breaking into a gas station, just to eat. From there, it was group homes, detention centers, a revolving door of authority figures who talked about accountability, but never once asked who had been accountable for her. Her juvenile record bloomed before her womanhood did. She got her GED in lockup at 17, memorized the whole prep book because no one ever gave her anything to keep. At 19, she was placed with a reentry program, got a job folding linens at a hotel. For 6 months, she tried. Paid rent, stayed clean, read Toni Morrison at night. Then, one night, she was cornered by a man in the alley behind the building. He wore a badge, not a mask. He told her she looked like trouble in lace. She said no. He didn't care. She reported it. The hospital ran a rape kit. The results were inconclusive. The officer
I missed something.
placed with a reentry program, got a job folding linens at a hotel. For 6 months, she tried. Paid rent, stayed clean, read Toni Morrison at night. Then, one night, she was cornered by a man in the alley behind the building.
Okay, so she got cornered by a police officer in the back of an alley. And he did the unthinkable. Was he the one that transmitted it to her first? Or did she already have it? Was this the correctional officer that got his just due for doing something he should have never done, especially being an officer of the law? I would say karma did his job there if that was the case.
He wore a badge, not a mask. He told her she looked like trouble in lace. She said no. He didn't care. She reported it. The hospital ran a rape kit. The results were inconclusive. The officer, Sergeant Ronald Keller, had a clean record. She was just a troubled girl. 2 months later, she tested positive for HIV.
Uh-oh.
She didn't scream. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't cry. She just shut off. The next few years were a blur. Small cons, quick scams, anything to eat and survive. By 22, she was in and out of county jail for fraud. At 25, she was in a maximum security facility after scamming a retired white couple out of their life savings.
Wow.
The press called her a predator in lipstick. The DEA called her calculating. But no one ever called her human. She watched herself disappear in the court transcripts, in the mugshots, in the sterile numbers stamped on her jumpsuit. When a medical report confirmed her status, HIV positive, it wasn't a shock. It was just the final confirmation that she was exactly who the system had made her to be. Still, she didn't plan revenge. Not yet. The seed of that came later, when she testified in a civil rights case and realized just how little anyone cared until cameras were on. It was never about justice. It was about narrative, headlines, optics. That's when she understood. If she wanted to be heard, she'd have to speak the only language the system understood, control. And no one controlled her anymore. Tiana had been passed around the juvenile system since she was 12. Foster homes, detention centers. She never knew stability, but she learned survival. By 19, she had a GED and a rap sheet. At 22, she was arrested for scamming a retired couple out of their life savings. At 25, she tested positive for HIV, months after being sexually assaulted by a prison guard in another facility. She reported it. No one believed her. Now, 6 years later, she was being transferred to Palmwood as part of a federal relocation program after testifying in a separate civil rights case involving officer misconduct.
Oh
She was
boy.
supposed to be protected, but anyone who's been inside long enough knows. Protection is just a word. Nothing more. Palmwood was a male-run prison, and although it had a small women's unit, the structure was the same: concrete walls, cold food, fluorescent lights that never fully turned off. But unlike other inmates, Tiana was given privileges. She worked in administration, organizing files, cleaning offices, running errands for the warden himself. And that's where the trouble began. She was smart. Too smart. She memorized schedules, passwords, phone extensions. She knew which guards were married and which ones weren't. She knew who drank coffee with whiskey in it and who flirted with the nurses during lunch.
Uh-oh.
Tiana didn't need to lift a finger to gain control. She just watched and waited. She walks like she owns the place. One officer whispered during roll call, "Wouldn't mind being owned for a night." Another joked, laughing behind his badge. What they didn't know was this: Tiana wasn't there for redemption. She wasn't there to survive. She was there to make them feel what she felt. Powerless, used, forgotten. And she was just getting started. Warden Glenn Marshall was not the kind of man you'd expect to slip. 56 years old, a decorated veteran in corrections, married for 28 years.
See, that's the thing, bro. A lot of men in this world struggle with lust. Yes, a lot of men in this world struggle with lust. See, women don't struggle with it because they can get intimacy or whatever whenever they want. All they gotta do is just, make the energy seem right, seem welcoming, and talk to a guy that they think is attractive, and 9 times out of 10 it's probably going to happen if she wants it to happen. But see, it's different for men. We can't just, well, maybe we can, depending on who you are. You just, hey, I want you tonight. But it don't really work like that for the majority of most men. You have to be qualified to be with a woman. Meaning, she got to be able to look at your life or look at something about you why she would want to give you her time. That could be another woman in your life. You know what I mean? Women don't want men that other women don't already want. I learned that from the movie Hitch, starring Will Smith and Eva Mendes. But look, as a man, it is imperative, it is important, it is crucial that you learn how to control your lust. And no, it is not an easy thing to do. But when you've made countless mistakes, you got to constantly pick up the pieces because you can't control yourself, it's going to mature you. Because you're going to get tired of being run through the ringer. You're going to be tired of being used. You're going to be tired of being manipulated and taken advantage of. So you realize it's better not to indulge. It's better just to keep my distance. I don't have to have her. I don't have to have her. I might want her a whole lot, but she is not a necessity in my survival or my thriving on this planet. That's what you got to come to the realization as a man. Our women can be your weakness, but when you learn how to conquer and overcome your weaknesses, you find infinite strength. I need y'all to start finding your infinity stones.
He ran Palmwood like a military base. Tight schedules, strict rules, no excuses. His office walls were covered in plaques, commendations, and a framed photo of him shaking hands with the governor. But something in him cracked the moment he met Tiana Brooks. She wasn't like the others. She didn't beg for favors. She didn't make excuses. She came into his office every afternoon to deliver case files, mop the floor, or organize old reports. Quiet, competent, unbothered. And yet, she had this presence. The kind that made men pause mid-sentence. Like gravity,
Had a nice body.
she never flirted, never smiled too wide. But one day, while organizing his file cabinet, She turned to him and said, "You should take your wedding ring off if you're not going to wear it right." It was the first time she'd said anything not work-related. Glenn looked down. The ring was on backward. He laughed awkwardly. "You notice everything, huh?" Tiana didn't answer. She just walked out. But her words stayed. He told himself it was harmless. She was a prisoner. He was the warden. There were lines, boundaries, morality. But by the end of that week, he was staying later than usual. Alone. And so was she. It started with small things. Letting her sit in the break room a little longer, turning off the hallway camera when she was cleaning his office, giving her access to files she didn't technically need. She'd leave post-it notes on his desk. "You look tired today. Try green tea instead. You should stop trusting Officer Doyle. He talks too much." It was subtle, personal, addictive. By the second month, Tiana had memorized the layout of the staff floor, knew which cameras had blind spots, and which doors never fully latched shut. She also knew that Warden Glenn Marshall hadn't slept with his wife in 3 years. Something he confessed in a moment.
See? Even in your marriage, you still have to learn how to conquer your lust. It is the biggest point. It is the biggest point of maturity for a man to conquer his lust. It's something that we all struggle with. We all struggle with this, and not all of us get to the place where we can conquer it. There are men twice my age. I'm in my 30s, 60 years old, probably still chasing around young skirts because they can't help themselves. They just gotta have it. You can't control yourself. It's a dangerous road to travel, especially when you can't control yourself around somebody who's, what's the word? Around somebody who's harboring a STD. And see, when you go into these facilities, they look at all your paperwork. They know what's in your blood. Everybody might not know, but the nurse staff do. And I'm sure word can get around. They don't keep nothing confidential. Everybody know. Everybody knows.
Of weakness, late one night, in his office, after 3 bourbons and a long stare. No one saw her leave his office that night. But Officer Brandon Hayes, young, fresh out of training, eager to prove himself, did notice something. Tiana humming a slow tune the next morning, her hair untied, eyes bright. He couldn't look away. And just like that, the next thread began to unravel.
Uh-oh.
Brandon Hayes didn't stand a chance. He was 27, newly hired, barely 6 months into the job. Still called Warden Marshall, sir, even when off duty. He worked overtime without asking and smiled too wide whenever someone said his name. Tiana noticed all of it. She waited until a stormy Wednesday afternoon to approach him. Just as he was finishing night duty, eyes heavy, hands shaking from too much vending machine coffee. She left a folded note on the console near the security booth. "You're the only one in here who still has a heart. Don't let them take it. No name, no signature." But he knew it was from her. That night, he stayed late, just like the warden. The next week, she had his phone number. By the end of the month, they were meeting in the janitor's closet near cell block D. No cameras, no witnesses, no protection. What Brandon didn't know, and what Tiana didn't tell, was that he wasn't the first, and he wouldn't be the last. Officer Marcus Reed was next. He was older, 44, married, 2 kids. He wasn't interested in Tiana at first. He was too busy trying to keep his life together. His wife had just left him after discovering an affair he swore never happened.
Oh, boy. So he liked to get around even. See, that's another thing. Another man who could not conquer his lust, even in marriage. A wife is not going to help you conquer your lust. This is something you have to do within yourself, my brothers. You must get to a place where the body of a woman, the eyes of a woman, her shape, her movement, it don't affect you. You can look at it and appreciate it, but it doesn't affect you because you know what's waiting at the end of that line, man. You know I'm talking about just physical appearances. For the men who cannot get past physical appearances, you're going to have a long, hard road ahead of you. I don't care what your life look like right now. You are going to have a long, hard road ahead of you. You have been warned.
But grief is heavy. Loneliness heavier. What no one saw, what Marcus never let anyone see, was the photo still taped behind his locker door. Two boys with bright eyes and matching hoodies, one barely 10, the other 7, both holding a #OneDad mug. That photo was 5 years old. The mug was gone. So were the boys. And the woman who took the picture hadn't spoken to him in almost a year. He hadn't cheated. Not really. It was a text. A late-night message to a coworker during a bad month. But his wife found it. And for her, it was the final crack in a wall already crumbling. Now, Marcus lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment with beige walls and quiet too loud to bear. He worked double shifts because he had no one to go home to. He stopped going to church, stopped calling his mother. He told himself he was rebuilding, but really he was dissolving. When Tiana said, "You just don't want to die invisible," she wasn't seducing him. She was describing him. And it terrified him how much he needed someone to see him, even if that someone was a prisoner. Tyler Moore had always believed he was built for control. Raised in a home where fear was love and fists were lessons. He learned early to never let emotion show. His father once beat him for crying during a dentist appointment. When he bled, he was told to clean it up and shut it down. So Tyler became an adult who did just that. He chose corrections because it rewarded stillness, rule following, a cold voice. In his world, compassion was a liability. But even steel rusts with time. And Tiana, she didn't try to melt him. She scratched at him like wind over concrete, slowly and endlessly. He didn't desire her. He resented her. Resented the way she looked at him without fear, like she'd already seen the worst of him and was unimpressed. And somehow, that made him curious. When he followed her into the staff storage room, it wasn't lust. It was ego. He wanted to prove he couldn't be figured out, couldn't be seen. But that was the mistake, because Tiana didn't need to strip a man to see his shame. She only needed silence, and he gave her plenty of it. Sean Banks was never meant for this job. He applied to the Corrections Academy after failing the police entrance exam twice. His older brother was a local sheriff. His uncle was state trooper. He wanted to make them proud, but he was never built for confrontation. He hated the sound of cell doors slamming, hated the way inmates stared, hated being called boss like it was some ironic joke. And worst of all, he was drowning in debt. A gambling addiction that started in college poker games had ballooned into tens of thousands owed to local sharks. He'd taken a payday loan with 48% interest, sold his car, maxed out 3 credit cards. Still, it wasn't enough. When Tiana offered him tips on who was smuggling and how to flip it for cash, it felt like a solution. When she let him touch her, it felt like control. But every favor made her stronger and him smaller. He knew it wasn't real. But when you're falling, even a mirage looks like a lifeline. Brandon Hayes still believed in rules. That was his problem.
So how many officers is that right there? The first one who met her in the alley, we didn't really get his name. Then there was the warden. And then it was, I think, 2 more. I didn't catch all the names, but it says 6, so let's see.
At 27, he thought the world made sense if you just followed the manual. He said, "Yes, sir," to everyone.
There's no
Kept
manual.
his shirts pressed. Brought donuts on Fridays. He still lived with his grandmother, partly to save money, partly because he didn't know how to live alone. Tiana didn't seduce Brandon. She believed in him, or at least made him believe she did. That note, "You're the only one in here who still has a heart,"
Okay.
was the first kind thing anyone had said to him in months, maybe years. She let him talk about his dreams, about how he wanted to become a counselor someday. She asked questions, listened. So when she touched his hand in that janitor's closet, Brandon didn't think of rules. He thought being needed, and that was enough. Kevin Doyle was the only one who'd been abused and had turned it into religion, a doctrine of domination. His father was a boxer, his mother a shadow. He was told to man up before he even knew what crying meant. The army taught him how to hurt with discipline. The prison taught him how to do it with a paycheck. He hated weakness in others because he feared it in himself. That's why Tiana's calm unnerved him. Why her silence enraged him. Why her smirk made his fists clench. He told himself she was trash, but the truth is he saw in her the same thing he saw in himself, a survivor, but one who didn't need violence to get what she wanted. And that made her dangerous. The first time he touched her, it wasn't planned. It wasn't tender. But when she whispered, "You'll come around," they all do, he realized he already had. Tiana offered no comfort, no pity. Just a single sentence, spoken during lights-out inspection. "You're not a bad man, Marcus. You just don't want to die invisible." The next day, he led her into the restricted break room. The week after that, she was sitting on his lap. Tyler Moore was different. Cynical, cold, calculated. He was the one who watched everything but said nothing. He had a temper, one that even the inmates feared. Tiana didn't flirt with him, didn't smile. Instead, she challenged him. "You play big boss, but I bet you've never had someone who wasn't afraid of you." Tyler clenched his jaw. 3 days later, he followed her into the staff storage room and locked the door behind them. Sean Banks was easy. He had a gambling problem, owed money to the wrong people. Tiana offered him burner phones and tips on which inmates were smuggling cigarettes in return for favors. And her body. He told himself it was just stress relief, that it meant nothing. But she owned him. Kevin Doyle was the last. He was the most dangerous.
Kevin Doyle.
Strong. Violent. He never smiled. Never joked. He called Tiana trash the first day she arrived. She ignored him, but he saw the way the other guards treated her, heard the rumors, and something inside him snapped. He cornered her during inspection, grabbed her arm, spat at her feet.
What?
She leaned in close, whispered calmly, "You'll come around." They all do. 3 weeks later, he did. By month 6, Tiana Brooks had full access to nearly every room in Palmwood's administration wing. She had 5 phones hidden in different storage units, a stash of prescription pills, and passwords to confidential files.
So in a matter of 6 months, she had the warden and 5 other officers at her every beck and call. 6 months, half a year, 1 month for each one. Dang, that's crazy. It just shows you how weak some men actually are, even in positions of authority. They succumb to their lust every single time. Wow. Alright, it took me a quick little break to recalibrate my mind. So we're going to continue this video. It was just a little jump cut for you, but I took like 5 minutes.
Most of all, she had 6 men under her thumb. They didn't talk to each other about her. They didn't even suspect they weren't alone. But Tiana knew exactly what she was doing. And soon, she'd make them pay for everything the system ever did to her. It started with a headache. Officer Brandon Hayes thought it was just stress. Then came the chills, the night sweats, the fatigue. He stopped eating, started losing weight. His mother begged him to go to a doctor. He resisted, until the night he collapsed in the parking lot of a grocery store. At the hospital, the diagnosis was swift. Then came the results that shattered his world. HIV positive. He stared at the nurse in silence, blinking slowly like she'd spoken in a different language. I've never used drugs, he muttered. I've
Don't mean
never.
shit.
I don't. I'm careful. But his mind had already gone to one place. Tiana. The prison's internal protocol was triggered when the health department flagged the report. Brandon's recent sexual partners were requested for screening, though he didn't disclose her name at first. He was too ashamed, too afraid. But within 10 days, 2 more guards quietly requested medical leave. First was Marcus Reed, then Sean Banks. Both men tested positive. Within a week, the entire unofficial circle around Tiana was under quiet scrutiny. Rumors spread like gasoline on a dry field. In a place built on order and routine, chaos took root, but only in whispers behind locked doors. Warden Glenn Marshall had been having trouble sleeping. He ignored the tightness in his chest, the way his skin crawled every time he passed Tiana in the hallway. She still smiled, still walked like she didn't have a care in the world. When he finally got tested, he didn't tell his wife. He told no one, but the results came in all the same. Positive. The last 2, Tyler Moore and Kevin Doyle, resisted testing altogether. They didn't want to know, but Tyler couldn't stop his hands from shaking when he handled his keys. Kevin snapped at an inmate so violently, he was pulled off duty for 3 days. They knew. They didn't need a test. They felt it in their bones. On a Thursday afternoon, the 6 men, each one infected, each one implicated, each one collapsing under the weight of their secret, met in an unused records room at the far end of the prison. The air was thick with silence. No one sat. No one made jokes.
So they all met up together? Oh, man. They all came together and had a discussion and they plotted a course of action on this woman? Man. But y'all the ones who fell for the trap. Y'all walked right into it and y'all knew it was a trap. As a correctional officer, you cannot fraternize with the prisoners. And you know this. You know this. So you got everything you deserved.
It was Glenn who finally spoke. His voice cracked. She did this. On purpose. Marcus nodded, eyes sunken. She never asked me to wear anything. Not once. Tyler punched the file cabinet hard enough to leave a dent. She played us all. She killed us, Kevin growled, one by one, and she's still walking around this place like a queen. Sean leaned against the wall, barely able to hold himself upright. If the board finds out, we're done. Not just fired. We'll be sued, publicly humiliated. You think our family survived that? Glenn's voice turned cold. We have one option. No one questioned it. Not that night. Tiana felt it. The shift in the air. The way the men stopped making eye contact. The sudden silence when she entered a room. The absence of her usual visitors. She knew what came next. But she didn't run. She didn't plead. She just sat on the edge of her bunk that night and wrote her final letter. They wanted power. I gave them something they couldn't control. Now they know how it feels. It wasn't planned all at once. It started as a question no one dared to say out loud. Then it became a nod, a look, a silence thick with implication. By the following Monday, it had a name. The Resolution. They met after midnight in the security locker room, behind a door no inmate could ever access. Phones off, radios silent. 6 men infected, humiliated, afraid, not just of the disease in their blood, but of the shame that would follow. She's not going to stop, Kevin Doyle muttered, pacing like a caged animal. She'll go public, flip the whole system. She doesn't even have to, Marcus Reed replied. All it takes is one lawsuit, one lawyer, one test result linked to her. Tyler Moore stood by the sink, staring into the mirror like it could answer for him. We in this now. Quick. Clean. One night. She can't talk if she's not breathing. They knew who'd do it. Kevin had always been the enforcer. The muscle. The one who didn't blink when it got ugly. Glenn Marshall didn't argue. He didn't instruct. But when Kevin looked at him and said, "You want this done or not?" The warden just nodded. The night of the murder was chosen carefully. A Friday, when staff rotation was light. Tiana had been reassigned to solitary for disruption of schedule, a vague violation meant to isolate her without raising suspicion. At 2:13 a.m., the hallway camera outside her cell cut to static. At 2:15, Kevin entered the restricted block with a passcode only 3 people knew. By 2:27, Tiana Brooks was dead. No struggle, no scream. She was sedated first. Tyler had crushed antipsychotics from the infirmary into powder and mixed them into a water bottle they'd forced in her cell earlier. When Kevin opened the door, she was groggy, barely conscious. He used a braided sheet tied to the ceiling vent, looped it around her neck, hoisted her up until her legs stopped kicking. She didn't fight. She just looked at him with eyes full of knowing. "You're still weak," she whispered. "You'll always be weak." Then she went still. Kevin lowered her body, set the scene, tied the sheet again to the upper bar, staged a not consistent with a suicide, tucked her hands to her sides, left the cell door locked behind him. At 3:01 a.m., the hallway camera turned back on. The official report read, "Inmate suicide." No signs of foul play. The warden signed the paperwork himself. No autopsy was requested. No media coverage. No questions. It was done. They went back to work like nothing had happened. Brandon.
So if they went back to work like nothing happened, how did it all come out? That's what I'm interested in. How did it all come out? Was it the letter that she wrote? Was it in the letter that she wrote? Is that how it came out, through the letter she wrote? I think that might have been it.
Still gaunt, still shaking, returned to monitoring cameras. Marcus cried in the staff bathroom twice that week. Tyler started drinking again. Kevin slept with a gun under his pillow. But the secret held. For 2 weeks, Marcus Reed stopped shaving. He used to keep a neat mustache, clean jawline, the look of a man who had things together, even if that was a lie. But after the diagnosis, his face stayed covered in stubble. He stared at himself in the mirror each morning and saw someone unfamiliar, someone shrinking. One night, he called his oldest son, Jalen. It had been almost a year. The phone rang 5 times. Then voicemail. He didn't leave a message. He tried again the next night. This time, Jalen answered. "Hello." Marcus froze. "It's Dad." Silence. "I just wanted to hear your voice," he said. "That's all." Jalen didn't reply. Then came the click. Marcus stared at the wall for hours that night. He didn't cry. Couldn't. Something inside him had turned to stone. Brandon Hayes couldn't eat. His grandmother noticed first. She made fried chicken the way he liked it, crispy, golden, with mashed potatoes and green beans. But he just pushed it around the plate. "What's wrong with you, baby?" she asked, touching his arm. Brandon forced a smile. "Just tired, Nana." She squeezed his hand. "You always were too sweet for this world." He excused himself, threw up in the bathroom, then sat on the floor for 20 minutes, shaking. He hadn't told her. Couldn't. The guilt sat on his chest like concrete. Sean Banks started driving past his old church every Sunday. He never went in, just sat in the parking lot and stared at the stained glass windows, listening to gospel music on the radio. He used to be a choir boy. His mother used to say he had an angel's voice. Now, he couldn't sing a note without choking. One night, he found himself in his car, engine running, garage door shut. A bottle of bourbon half empty on the passenger seat. He let it idle for 5 minutes, 10, 15. Then a Marvin Sapp song came on the radio. Never would have made it. He turned the engine off and sobbed. Tyler Moore locked himself in the staff locker room after hours. He sat on the bench, stared at the wall, and punched it. Again, until the skin over his knuckles split and blood ran down to his wrist. He hated weakness, but what he hated more was feeling seen. Tiana had seen him. Not the uniform, not the muscles. The man, the scared, furious, abandoned boy underneath it all, and she had let him believe, even for a moment, that he wasn't invisible. Now she lived in his head. She was in the mirror when he brushed his teeth, in the silence when he tried to sleep, in the ache behind every clenched fist. Kevin Doyle wasn't sleeping at all. He'd wake in cold sweat, convinced someone was in the room, that she was in the room, standing at the foot of his bed, just watching. He started checking his blood pressure 3 times a day. Paranoid, angry, short-fused. One night, he loaded his gun, unloaded it, loaded it again, then sat in the dark and whispered. She knew what she was doing. She knew. He couldn't bring himself to say her name. Warden Glenn Marshall sat in his office past midnight. Lights off, whiskey bottle half empty, the framed photo of him and the governor face down on the desk. His wedding ring sat in the drawer, untouched. He read her final post-it note over and over. You should stop trusting Officer Doyle. He talks too much. That smile, that calm, that control. He realized something he never wanted to admit. He hadn't just let his guard down. He had wanted to. Tiana had made him feel chosen, not pitted, not worshipped, just seen. And now he was infected, not just in blood, in reputation, in soul. He opened the bottom drawer of his desk, pulled out the copy of the Bluest she once carried. She'd left it there after organizing the shelves one afternoon. He never gave it back. Inside, a folded note, blank on the outside. He opened it. No words, just a drawing. A mirror cracked down the middle. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, Glenn Marshall prayed. Then the letter surfaced. It started with a book. 2 weeks after her death, a prison librarian named Lydia Holmes was clearing out Tiana's personal property when she noticed something odd. Tucked into a dog-eared copy of The Bluest by Toni Morrison was a sealed envelope.
So yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It was the letter that she wrote that got all of them up out of there. And I wonder what happened to the guys after they were found out. I want to know all of that. I want to know all of that.
Worn, but intact. Her name wasn't on it. No return address. Just 4 words written in black ink. For when I'm gone. Curious, but unsure. Lydia handed it off to the prison chaplain, who, per protocol, opened it in private. Inside was a 6-page handwritten letter.
6
The handwriting
pages.
was tight, clean, unshaken.
She had a page of information for each officer. 6 months, 6 pages. Do we really gotta do the triple? She was the devil.
It wasn't a suicide note. It was a confession, a chronicle, a testimony. In the letter, Tiana Brooks detailed everything. Each man she slept with, each moment she used, each guard she watched fall under her control. And most importantly, her reason. You see me as the disease, but I didn't infect you. The system did. It chewed me up and spat me back out, and you were just the next wave to drown in it. I didn't pick you because I hated you. I picked you because you reminded me of the men who broke me, who smiled while hurting me, who never paid. Now you pay. The letter ended with a final, searing sentence. This prison never kept me in, only made me more dangerous. The chaplain brought the letter to the warden. Warden Glenn Marshall, who had signed off on her cause of death, who hadn't slept a full night since the murder, who'd started having chest pains whenever someone said her name. He read the letter in silence, then locked it in his drawer, but it didn't end there. 3 days later, a rookie tech assistant at the Department of Corrections ran a routine security audit, part of an unrelated maintenance request. While checking archived footage, he found a glitch pattern on the camera outside cell 14 the night Tiana died. The camera had been manually disabled, then reactivated. Only 3 staff members had override access: Glenn Marshall, Tyler Moore, and Kevin Doyle. The audit report was automatically flagged for review. By the time internal investigators arrived at Palmwood, the rumors were already boiling. Tiana hadn't killed herself. Something else had happened. Something no one wanted to admit. An inquiry was launched. Investigators began questioning staff, cross-referencing badge swipes, reviewing camera logs, call records, and, most damning, the letter. Then came the forensic review of Tiana's cell. The first red flag came from a woman named Maya Thompson. She was an internal compliance investigator, mid-30s, sharp eyes, a calm voice that cut through noise like a scalpel. She used to be a public defender, then worked 3 years inside a state facility before becoming an auditor. Unlike most, Maya had been behind bars, framed for embezzlement by a former boss and exonerated after 18 months. That time left a scar. It also left her allergic to lies. She wasn't supposed to be on the Palmwood case, but a glitch in the camera logs triggered an automatic flag, and her name was next in the rotation. The prison's official story was suicide, open and shut, but as soon as Maya read the shift logs, her instincts said otherwise. She started with the basics: badge scans, staff entry times, medical inventory usage. 2 things jumped out. The infirmary had reported a missing vial of Seroquel, an antipsychotic sedative, 2 days before Tiana's death. The security camera outside cell 14 had no recorded motion between 1:45 and 3:05 a.m., which contradicted hallway sensor data showing 2 separate entries. That camera didn't malfunction, she said aloud. It was disabled. Maya requested the override logs. Only 3 people had the authority to manually kill the hallway feed: Warden Glenn Marshall, Officer Tyler Moore, and Sergeant Kevin Doyle. All 3 claimed to be off shift during the window. She didn't believe them. The next stop was the body, except there was no autopsy, no photos of the ligature marks, no toxicology, just a handwritten report from the prison's medic saying no visible trauma inconsistent with suicide. It was signed by a nurse who hadn't worked a shift that week. Maya called her directly. The nurse was stunned. "I didn't sign that report," she said. "I wasn't even in the building that night." Forgery. That was strike 3. Then came the interview with Lydia Holmes, the librarian.
So y'all, they broke every law. As a correctional officer in the facility, they broke every single law and murdered someone. They conspired to murder someone and went and did it. And they did it because she ruined their lives because they wanted to play with her. They got everything they deserved. And we're not even done with the video yet. And I know each one of them dudes got everything they deserved. There was plenty of other officers she could have targeted, but she picked the right ones.
Lydia was the one who found the letter tucked into the bluest eye, the one who turned it in, the one who kept quiet. Until now. Maya sat across from her in the chapel office. Lydia's hands trembled as she spoke. She said she was ready, Lydia whispered. "A few days before it happened, Tiana told me they think they're going to win. But I already did." Maya leaned in. Did she say anyone had threatened her? Lydia hesitated. She didn't have to. I saw the way they looked at her, like she was a ghost they couldn't get rid of. Maya asked for the original letter. Lydia didn't have it. Neither did the chaplain. It was gone. "Misplaced," said the warden's office. "Possibly discarded." But Maya knew better. She filed a formal subpoena for backup surveillance logs. Off-site archival footage not accessible from Palmwood itself. It took 2 days. When the tapes arrived, she watched the cell 14 hallway minute by minute. At 2:13 a.m., the hallway feed turned to static, exactly as the sensor logs predicted. At 3:01 a.m., it flickered back to life. 1 second of static lingered just long enough to reveal a shadow moving across the floor. Broad shoulders, buzzed haircut, limping slightly. Kevin Doyle. The next morning, Maya requested an interview with Warden Marshall. He greeted her in his office, wearing a starched shirt and hollow eyes. On the wall behind him, the framed photo with the governor was gone. "Thank you for coming," he said flatly. Maya sat across from him, dropped the printed footage stills on the desk, then the forged nurse report, then the entry logs. She said nothing. Glenn stared at the pages for a long time, then whispered, "Wasn't supposed to go that far." Maya took detailed notes, but it wasn't a confession. Not yet. She walked out of that office knowing the dominoes were ready. They just needed one good push. She found that push in Marcus Reed. He was in the break room, staring into a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. Maya walked in quietly, sat beside him. "I'm not here to ruin your life," she said. "I'm here because someone took another one." Marcus didn't speak, didn't move. She slid a photo across the table. Tiana, smiling faintly in a yellow prison shirt, holding a clipboard. Alive. She trusted someone, Maya said. "I need to know if it was you." His hand shook. His lips parted. "I didn't know they were going to kill her," he muttered. I thought it was just talk." "What happened in that cell, Marcus?" she asked gently. Tears welled up. "We drugged her. Kevin did it. The rest of us, we stood back." "What?" Maya pressed. He stared at the floor. "Because we were afraid of her." That was enough. She turned the statement over to internal affairs.
See, look at that. Look at that. They were afraid of her because she had all the power in her hands to ruin the entirety of their lives. They would be humiliated. They would be let go. And they probably would never ever get a chance to get another good paying job ever again. She had it all over them. She took revenge. She took revenge on them for the world turning her into a demon. And they fell for the trap, hook, line, and sinker. You have to control your lust. Men, you have to control your lust.
Subpoenas were issued. Phones were seized. The House of Cards collapsed. Though the prison had ruled it suicide, there was no bruising on her neck consistent with self-hanging. But there was a small injection mark on her left shoulder, evidence of a sedative. From the infirmary, prescribed by Tyler Moore. The web was coming undone. One by one, the guards were brought in. None of them spoke. Not at first, but fear is louder than loyalty. And when Marcus Reed cracked, crying through clenched fists, begging for leniency, everything unraveled. The courtroom was packed, not with the usual spectators looking for drama, but with reporters, victims' families, and former inmates who'd once been dismissed, silenced, ignored. They came for answers. Some came for closure. Others came to watch the system turn on itself. 6 men sat side by side at the defense table, all in suits, all in handcuffs. Warden Glenn Marshall, pale and visibly thinner.
Look at that. Look at that. How the turns have tabled. You got police officers in suits and they in handcuffs because everybody know what they did. Everybody know what they did. You could tell this is an AI generated photo because this lady is walking through the cell door. The second from the left, she's walking through the cell door. That's how you could tell it's an AI generated photo.
Tyler Moore, eyes cold, jaw locked. Kevin Doyle, defiant until the last. Marcus Reed, broken. Sean Banks, trembling. Brandon Hayes, who hadn't said a word since his arrest. The prosecution played it carefully, methodically presenting the letter, the injection mark, the disabled camera logs, and Marcus's full confession. They showed the motive, the cover-up, and the betrayal of public trust. The most damning moment came when the prosecutor read a loudest section of Tiana's letter. They thought I was just a prisoner, but I became the mirror. I made them see what they really were, and they couldn't stand a reflection. There was no cross-examination strong enough to undo those words. The verdicts came quickly. Glenn Marshall was sentenced to 30 years for conspiracy, abuse of authority, and obstruction of justice. Tyler
Deserved.
Moore and Kevin Doyle were both given life sentences without parole for first-degree murder. Marcus Reed, who cooperated and expressed deep remorse, received 28 years.
Wow.
Sean Banks was given 22 years, with parole eligibility after 15. Brandon Hayes, whose role in the cover-up was passive but deliberate, was sentenced to 18 years. None of them spoke during sentencing, but when they were escorted out, a voice from the gallery called out, "She's still more powerful than all of you combined." Outside the courthouse, people held signs. "Justice for Tiana. Protect women behind bars."
Wow.
A broken system can't heal itself. A petition was launched to have Tiana's voice, her letter, read publicly before Congress. A growing movement began to demand external oversight in prisons. It started with a podcast. A week after the letter was leaked to the press, a true crime podcast called Beyond the Bars aired a special 2-hour episode titled, "She Wasn't a Monster. She Was a Mirror." The host, a former public defender named April Knox, didn't sensationalize it. She read every word of Tiana's letter aloud, slowly, carefully, with tears in her voice. By morning, it had over 1.2 million streams. Listeners flooded the comments. "She turned pain into power. I've never cried like this over someone I never met. This isn't just about one woman. It's about all of us." National media picked it up next. CNN, the New York Times, even conservative outlets, usually quiet on prison reform, couldn't look away. The headlines read like thunderclaps. Rolled up newspaper, prisoner's death sparks federal probe. Rolled up newspaper, she infected them with HIV. They killed her. But that's not the whole story. Rolled up newspaper, Tiana Brooks, the woman who brought down 6 officers. But not everyone was mourning. On right-wing radio, a host called her a manipulative sociopath who used sex as a weapon. Another said she got what she deserved. But those voices for once were drowned out, because something deeper was waking up. Former inmates began writing in, some anonymously, others with names and scars. One woman from Indiana wrote, "I was assaulted in prison in 2009. I told a nurse. She called me a liar. I still have nightmares. But Tiana made me feel like I'm not crazy." A man from Mississippi, "I watched an officer beat a female inmate unconscious. Nothing happened. No one listened. Now people are. Hundreds of letters, emails, voice recordings.
Yes, sir.
Tiana had opened a door that couldn't be shut.
Yes.
Then came the protests. In Atlanta, in D.C., in front of correctional facilities across the country. Not loud, not violent, just quiet lines of people holding candles, holding signs. Candle, she was a voice. Candle, justice doesn't die in cell 14. Candle, I existed. The last one was a quote from the note she scribbled as a child. Somehow, someone had found it. It went viral. Lawmakers were forced to respond. Senator Alicia Dawes of Georgia, herself a former foster child, called for an emergency hearing on systemic abuse and neglect within women's correctional facilities. In her opening statement, she said, "What happened to Tiana Brooks is not isolated. It is institutional. If we fail to act, we are complicit." She ended by reading the last paragraph of Tiana's letter aloud.
Okay, I just have to say, this was an amazing story. Yeah, it's tragic. Yes, it's very tragic for the girl, but the officers, in my opinion, they got what they deserved. As an officer of the law, you're supposed to hold a certain level of professionalism, especially in a correctional facility. Especially in a correctional facility. I feel as though people, they don't learn a lesson until it's too late. You playing it way too close to the chest. You're in the jail. The things that you're doing can get you put in jail in the same situation that she's in. But I guess when you can't conquer your lust, you're going to be reduced to dust. Can't conquer your lust, get reduced to dust.
Chamber was silent, but backlash came too. Private prison lobbyists began pressuring donors. Emails leaked showing attempts to silence whistleblowers. One correctional union even filed a lawsuit against the Department of Corrections, calling the investigation biased and politically motivated. But the dam had already cracked.
So because this was a great story, I'm not going to subscribe because I'm not really big on crime stories and stuff. But I definitely got to give this video a like. If you want to help out the channel or whatever, support the guy, whoever made this, even though it's an AI voiceover, somebody put a lot of time and effort into this outside of generating the photos and stuff like that. You still got to do the subtitles and all that. So, yeah, man, this is a good video. Let's finish it.
Because for the first time, inmates were being believed. A woman named Patrice Holloway flew in from Oregon to speak at a press conference. She had served 12 years in a state prison where Kevin Doyle once worked. I didn't know her, Patrice said, voice trembling. But I knew her. I knew what it felt like to be watched like prey. I knew what it meant to be punished for surviving. She held up a copy of The Bluest Eye. She reminded me I still had a voice, even if I had to scream it through a locked door. Tiana's sister, Joy, came forward next. She hadn't seen Tiana since they were kids in foster care. Had been told for years she was dead or somewhere gone. She found out the truth through the news. At the vigil, Joy lit a candle and said, "She was never lost. You just didn't look hard enough." Even prison staff began speaking up. An anonymous letter arrived at the Department of Justice from a guard in Ohio. I saw things. I stayed silent. Tiana's death cracked something in me. I'm not proud of what I allowed. Another former officer from Florida publicly resigned, saying, "If this system demands we look away, then I don't want to be part of it." The hashtag I existed trended for 6 days straight. People began sharing their own stories of survival, with mugshots, with diaries, with bruises, with poetry. Tiana's face was printed on t-shirts, posters, murals. But it wasn't hero worship. It was reckoning. A reckoning long overdue, especially in women's facilities where abuse often goes unreported. A week later, a quiet ceremony was held at the edge of Atlanta. A plaque was unveiled at a nonprofit legal clinic for incarcerated women. It read, "In honor of Tiana Brooks, 1991 to 2023. You call me a prisoner. I was a mirror. I was your reckoning." But the story didn't end there. Because even in death, Tiana Brooks changed laws, changed lives, and changed the narrative. She made people uncomfortable. She made them think. And more than anything, she made them listen. 6 months after the verdicts, the world moved on. The headlines faded. Reporters chased new scandals. The Palmwood Correctional Facility got a new warden, new protocols, and a fresh coat of paint. Like a crime scene trying to forget itself. But some wounds don't vanish, and some names won't be erased. In a small office building on the east side of Atlanta, a door opened to a nonprofit with no security guards, no metal detectors, just a bold sign in black block letters. Tiana's Voice, Legal Aid for Incarcerated Women. The organization was founded by Lydia Holmes, the prison librarian who found Tiana's letter, and Vanessa Cross, a civil rights attorney who once served time herself. Together, they turned Tiana's final words into a mission, investigating claims of abuse in women's prisons, providing legal support to inmates facing retaliation, training staff on trauma-informed prison practices, and, most importantly, listening to the women no one believed. Tiana's letter, once hidden inside a novel, was now framed on the wall behind the reception desk. Visitors, lawyers, social workers, ex-inmates, family members would stop and read it in silence. One paragraph in particular brought them to tears. If I had screamed, they would have called it hysteria. If I had cried, they'd call it manipulation. So I gave them something they couldn't ignore. Fear, shame, reflection. Her words became a rallying cry. Her name, a symbol, not of revenge, but of reckoning. In 2025, a bill passed in the Georgia State Senate mandating independent civilian oversight of all state-run correctional facilities, including mandatory reporting of sexual misconduct and protection for whistleblowers. It was called the Brooks Act. Governor Collins signed it with a single sentence. This is long overdue, and it's only the beginning. But even as systems shifted and awareness grew, Tiana's legacy lived in more personal spaces. In support groups, women would say, "She gave me courage to speak." In courtrooms, young lawyers would whisper, "We fight for her now." And in prisons across America, inmates would pass around the bluest eye, flipping carefully through the pages, hoping, maybe, to find something Tiana left behind. Every year on the anniversary of her death, a candlelight vigil is held outside Palmwood. Former inmates read her letter aloud. Advocates tell her story, and a choir of survivors sings in the cold night air. You call me a prisoner. I was your mirror. I was your reckoning. And now, I am your voice. If this story moved you even a little, if Tiana's voice made you feel something, don't let's stop here. Hit the like button to help more people hear her story. Drop a comment below. We read every single one.
Well, this was a great video. It was a good story about abuse of power and how giants fall. Authority figures. See, when you got absolute power, it's going to corrupt you absolutely. That's what power does. That's what power does. That's why I don't go out here seeking power. I want peace. I want peace of mind. I want to just be able to live my days and enjoy them the best way that I can. And I find being in a peace of mind for an extended period of time is all I need. I don't need a million people around me for me to feel happy. It's actually the opposite. I probably wouldn't be happy if there was a million people around me. All that talking and distraction and all that. You just, man, you can't even think straight when people are always around you and stuff. Sometimes you need to be alone to recharge and to get yourself to regroup and all that. You know what I mean? But this video was going on for an extended period of time. We finished the whole thing, 56 minutes and 15 seconds. There's a couple seconds left and they just tell you to like, share, and subscribe. We already liked the video. I'm not going to subscribe because I'm not really into crime stories. I just came across this one and I just could not help but click onto it. So with that being said, Professor Hawk signing out. Hawk Sensei bids you adieu. I hope you enjoyed this reaction, guys. Toodaloo.